I'm starting with my history. My patient, a 32-year-old gentleman, resident of Thane, a security worker at mall by occupation, came to the OPD with chief complaints of swelling over the veins of the right lower limb since 1.5 years. The patient was apparently asymptomatic for 1.5 years when he first noticed a swelling on the right leg near the ankle and calf region on the inner side, which gradually increased on standing and after work and reduced on sleeping at night. Over 1.5 years, the swelling has gradually extended from the calf to the thigh region. The patient also complains of swelling coming from above on standing. The patient complains of occasional dragging pain while coming home in the evening after work, which is relieved during night. The patient consulted a private practitioner before 1 year and was told to have varicose veins and was advised stockings. Patient gives history of non-compliance with stockings. Patient also has taken some homeopathic medications for 1 month before 6 months without any benefit. Patient has no history of muscle cramps or pain while walking, no history of prolonged bed rest, cast placement, any limb or major surgery prior to the onset of that swelling. There is no history of joint movement restrictions and the patient is able to walk without inconvenience. There is no history of abdominal swelling or dilated abdominal veins. There is no history of ulcer over the lower limb or skin discoloration or skin thickening or itching. There is no history of redness or pain over the swelling. No history of any procedure done prior for this swelling. No history of bleeding from the swelling. Patient has normal sleep, unaltered bowel and bladder habits, consumes mixed diet and has no addiction. There is no history of diabetes, hypertension and tuberculosis. There is no family history of any varicosities. I have a photo of the varicose. I only have one photo of the patient of the varicose veins. This concludes my history.
So did you take the history yourself or you are presenting the history from a file?
No, sir. I took the history of the patient myself, sir.
You have taken the history. Okay. So
Yes,
what did the patient exactly complain of?
sir, actually the patient told me that he had varicose veins because he was already told by a private practitioner outside.
So what are the presenting complaints in a patient with varicose veins?
Sir, a patient comes with complaint. A patient can come with a complaint of swelling over the lower limbs, especially over the lower leg.
Swelling is not generally a presentation of a patient with varicose veins. Generally, a patient with varicose veins will present with
Dragging pain sort of.
Dragging pain, yes, that's one.
Yes, sir. Or there may be some cosmetic issues with the patient may be facing.
He may come and tell you that there are some prominent veins.
Yes, prominent veins.
Like this, what will he come and tell you? He will not say there is a swelling. He will come and tell you that there are multiple dilated veins he has over his legs. Multiple vessels, he may tell you, not veins maybe. He will tell you that
yes, multiple vessels.
So what did he tell you exactly? That is what I want to know.
Actually, he told me he has complaints of varicose veins, but when I asked him that what complaint initially he presented with, he told that he complained of dilated some vein sort of thing, dilated vessels.
So that is what the point I want to make to you. It is for everybody to understand that when you are presenting the history, always tell what the patient has complained. Don't give your own interpretation. The patient has not told you that he has a swelling on his leg. If you say patient has got a swelling on his leg, that only denotes that there is some soft tissue tumor or a mass or something like that. Swelling means that.
Yes, sir.
Do you agree with me or not?
Yes, sir.
So the history should have been that patient had dilated vessels, multiple dilated vessels, which are progressively increasing or whatever, I don't know, whatever the history is.
Yes, sir.
So history should never start with swelling. Swelling means lump hai uske. That is what it denotes to me, na? Without seeing the patient.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Dhaval, I have a question for you. You did not mention about the negative history opposite limb. Patient has come with one side definitely, but as a doctor, you are supposed to ask whether he is suffering the same symptoms on the opposite side.
Yes, ma'am. He was not complaining of any swelling.
Supposed to
Any
mean there is no
yes,
history
yes, ma'am.
of
Yes,
complaints. And one more thing you mentioned, dilated veins over the abdomen. Where exactly you mean, in the center of the abdomen or on the
lower
lateral?
abdomen.
Okay,
Lower.
Dr. Dhawan, this is Dr. Sai. You said that
Yes,
he was advised stockings and he was non-compliant. Did you
yes,
ask him why and what type of stockings was given to him?
yes, sir. I asked him. He actually showed me the stockings, but he didn't know the type of stockings he.
No. Was it a below knee or an above knee stocking?
No, sir. It was an above knee, complete up to the
Exactly.
inguinalization.
So why do you
Yes.
think he was non-compliant?
Sir, he may be. He told me that he was complaining of pain and discomfort associated with that while he was wearing that stockings.
Okay, mostly these the stockings given, it should be given below knee. Above knee stockings don't serve any purpose. They're difficult to manage, difficult to use, and the patients become non-compliant. So, and as I suspected, he must have been given a upper above knee stockings, which usually makes the patient non-compliant.
Yes, sir.
Right, Dhaval,
How
you
long?
said about pain, right? Uh, what is the characteristic of this pain, number one, and why do you get pain in the disease in the case that you have, and how would you differentiate the various types of pain in the limb, the lower limb?
Yes, sir. The patient complains of a mild dragging sort of pain occasionally on work because of the dilated veins.
Why is there pain where the veins are dilated?
Sir, I don't know about it.
Why would there be pain if there is a dilatation of the vein? What is the reason for that?
Unlike the arterial ischemia, this pain occurs during the later part of the day. Can
Yes,
you
sir.
connect it?
Yes, sir. Because like the entire day,
Is there any substance implicated in the circulation, accumulation of that which can cause pain?
What happens, Dhaval, I'll give you the answer, we won't waste time.
Yes,
Is that if the pain is because of the distension of the veins, and that puts pressure on the somatic nerves. So that is the cause of pain in a varicose vein, usually. That's what I can make out from a history. Now, how do you differentiate it from an intermittent claudication? You said there were no cramp-like pain. So what is an
Yes,
intermittent claudication?
Sir, the patient will typically complain of cramping pain in the muscle groups after walking for a certain distance. He may have to stop for some time for the relief of pain.
I would want a proper definition of an intermittent claudication. What are the three things that have to be mentioned in the definition?
Sir, it is the intermittent cramping like pain which occurs on walking, which is or exercise of the muscle group, which
part of the leg?
Especially in the calf region, which occurs on walking or exercise, which is relieved on rest.
Which is not present on the first step of walking.
Yes, which is not present on first step.
That's
yes.
Number one. And it is relieved by
on rest.
when he stops walking, not rest, stops
yes,
walking. So
stops
how do you
walking.
differentiate it from a neurogenic claudication?
Sir, in neurogenic claudication, the patient will have pain immediately on starting walking.
No. Oh. What condition do you have pain immediately on starting walking? An old gentleman in bed, when he walks the first step, what is the cause of the pain?
Sir, maybe a lumbar disc prolapse or a disc
arthritis.
Arthritis.
Arthritis. That is why what we differentiate it from arthritis, right? And yes. What is the difference between a neurogenic claudication and intermittent claudication of arterial origin?
Sir, in intermittent claudication, it is also reproducible, and it relieves on the rest, whereas neurogenic claudication will appear quite early in the when he starts working.
No, you haven't got the answer. Claudication because of an arterial disease, when the patient stops walking, the pain will disappear. Whereas in a neurogenic claudication, the patient would have to lie down to relieve the pain. So that is clinically you can differentiate between an arterial claudication and a neurogenic claudication, right?
Yes.
Okay, carry on.
Differentiate it from a venous claudication.
Sir, in venous claudication, there will be throbbing pain, continuous in nature, associated with lower limb swelling of the calf region.
Throbbing pain. It's the word that we use.
Secondary to deep venous thrombosis or deep venous occlusions.
Yes. What kind of pain you get? Throbbing pain is entirely different. The busting pain.
Busting sort of pain, yes. Busting pain.
How to differentiate from a claudication, arterial claudication pain from venous claudication pain? Because most of the patients will not be able to differentiate these pains, whether it's a pain or a cramp, they'll not be able to differentiate.
Sir, we'll ask the patient. Arterial claudication will have a typical history of intermittent claudications, whereas
venous claudication is also intermittent claudication. Only when he walks, he will get a pain.
And venous claudication associated with
no, arterial claudication, the pain will stop immediately when the patient takes rest or when he is stand erect and is not walking. But in a venous claudication, it will not relieve immediately. It will take a long time to relieve, and he needs to lift the limb up. He needs to get the pain. And why do you get a pain in a claudication?
Sir, it is because of the reduced blood supply to the muscles.
That's fine. And why? What is the mechanism?
There is accumulation of substance P, sir, which causes. There is accumulation of substance P during the arterial claudication.
What is that P substance?
Sir.
Is it produce pain? P substance is not a pain-producing substance. What is that called?
Sir, I'm not aware.
It's only a neurotransmitter or a neuromodulator.
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead. But there is a
right. Carry on with yours. I'm sorry I didn't catch up with you. Have you finished with the personal history and all that? Because I lost connectivity at that time.
Yes, sir. I have.
You finished with the history because I lost connectivity.
Yes, so yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm finished with.
What about your past history and all? Have you?
Yes, sir.
Said about that?
Yes, sir. No past history.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
I moved with my.
What about his occupation?
Yes, sir. He is a security worker at mall by occupation, sir.
No, you will not stand for a long time?
Yes, sir. Sorry, sir.
You will not standing for a long time?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. He is standing for a long time.
Is it occupational disease?
Sorry, sir.
Is it this is an occupational disease for him or not?
Yes, sir. It is an occupational disease for him.
How long is doing that job? Your history is 1.5 years. But how long is security?
He is working since 7 years, sir. And he has left his job 3 months back.
He is security from 7 years.
Yes, sir.
Okay, why does prolonged standing lead to varicosities?
Sir, there is just an increased hydrostatic pressure in the standing position.
But there are valves. There are valves.
Yes, sir. Well, there is some associated valvular or vein abnormality, such as some sort of.
What is the normal hydrostatic pressure?
Sir, it is like during standing, it is around 30, sir.
30 during standing. It depends upon.
Sorry, sir. It's 90. It's 90.
Okay. So prolonged standing also, the hydrostatic pressure is not going to do that. The mechanism is not that increase of hydrostatic pressure.
And there will be associated venous incompetence because of malfunctioning of the valves.
Actually, this is the price we pay for being piped, right? There are no valves in the IVC. The first valve on a standing patient, on a human being, is the one at the saphenofemoral junction. That's the first valve. There are no valves in the IVC.
Yes, sir.
So all the pressure of the blood is on that valve. If that valve gives way, this thing will happen. Then there's the next valve, and then it goes on. It is just that single valve which is preventing varicosities.
What is the ambulatory venous hypertension?
That is blood pressure greater than 90 on standing, sir. It's because of.
No, please. Ambulatory venous hypertension. Patient walks normally like that, 90, 100. But what will happen when he walks?
There will be increased calf pressure, sir. The calf
we are
pressure.
talking about the hydrostatic pressure on the deep vein or a superficial vein?
On the superficial vein, sir.
Okay. So what will happen when he walks?
Sir, there will be activation of calf pumps which will pump the blood towards the heart. So there will be.
What will happen to the superficial? Cough pump is something deep.
Sir, there will be an increased pressure in the deep venous system, which gets transmitted to the superficial if perforator valves are incompetent.
This we are not talking about abnormal. Normally, what is peripheral arterial, venous hypertension, ambulatory venous hypertension. So it is a misnomer. It's not a hypertension. When the patient walks, the pressure should decrease. The inability of the superficial system to decrease the pressure below 30 degrees is called ambulatory venous hypertension. If you do a 10 tiptoe movement and if you measure the pressure, if it is not decreasing, why it is not decreasing? As you said rightly, from the calf muscle, the deep pressure is transmitted to the peripheral artery vessels. So the mechanism is always peripheral in ambulatory venous hypertension.
Okay, Dhaval, why don't you get varicose veins in the upper limb? Or do you get? Why is it only on the lower limb?
No, sir.
Why don't you get it in the upper limb? What's so special about the venous anatomy of lower limb as compared to upper limb?
There are two systems of veins, basically, a superficial system and a deep system.
So you have the superficial, which is superficial to the deep fascia. So it's just lying between the skin and the deep fascia. It's superficial. And the two are connected. And the two are connected. The superficial
Dr. Dhaval, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
See, patient has told you it is varicose veins. He has given you a diagnosis. Are you sure that it is a varicose veins on clinical history? Because you've been mentioning you are revolving around the diagnosis of varicose veins because the patient has given you the diagnosis. Are you okay with the diagnosis on clinical history alone?
Of the veins dilated.
Because you have still not examined the patient, you have not seen the patient, you have just taken the history, and you have come to a conclusion it is varicose veins just because he has told you that. Is it okay or if?
Yes, sir.
How do you define
sir, the
varicose
patient
veins?
gives a typical history of. Yes, sir. So it's a type of chronic venous.
Actually, varicose veins has no typical history. That is a problem.
Yes, sir.
Isn't it? So how do you define varicose veins?
It is a dilated superficial. It's a type of chronic venous insufficiency.
No, there is a classical definition. Whenever the veins are dilated, elongated, and tortuous, then it is called varicose veins. Three properties should be there for a vein to call it varicose. Whatever is the system, wherever it is, these are the three properties should be there.
And how much dilatation? What is the difference between a varicose vein and telangiectasia and reticular vein?
Sir, telangiectasia are dilated intradermal veins that are around 1 mm or less in. Varicosities are usually greater than 3 to 4 mm in diameter.
What about reticular veins then?
Reticular veins are actually the subdermal veins which are in the diameter.
According to the classification, we say these are 3 degrees of dilatation, right? Telangiectasia is the smallest diameter one, which is less than 1 millimeter. Reticular veins slightly more than that. Varicose vein is more than 3, right? More than 3 millimeter. Yes. And between that 1 to 3 is the reticular veins. Reticular veins are also called spider veins.
We must insist is with a demonstrable reflex. All this not only just dilated tortuous vein can be called as a varicose vein. Only which has a demonstrable reflex, it is called as a varicose vein. There is a definition which is according to Bayesian law.
Okay, on the basis of history.
Sir, can we go to the clinical examination, sir?
Okay, we can go to the examination. Yeah.
Just hold on. On the basis of this clinical history, apart from varicose veins, do you want to keep any other differential diagnosis? Anything important which in a varicose vein you want to always keep it in mind during your clinical history?
Sir, the patient doesn't
the
give
legs were looked enlarged in size. It was hypertrophied legs, large.
Yes.
Do you think anything else?
Not in this patient, sir. Yes.
Nothing only for this patient.
Rule out on clinical examination in a patient with varicose vein always. Yes, AV fistula, yes, can be there.
Can be there.
What else?
Yes, sir. It can be any congenital syndrome, or it can be any any history of deep venous occlusion or deep venous thrombosis?
Yeah. So
Any
you have to
pathological?
always in the history keep the possibility of a Klippel tunnel syndrome, AV fistula, deep vein thrombosis, lymphedema. So will not generally have dilated veins. You will not get dilated veins in a patient with lymphedema.
Yes.
Okay, I think you can go ahead.
Yes, sir. I go ahead with the examination. On general examination, the patient is well built. Patient has been examined with adequate light and exposure. Patient has been examined in supine and standing position as and when required. Patient is vitally stable. No history, no evidence of failure, ascites, lymphadenopathy, or edema. On inspection, the gait of the patient is normal. Tubular dilated tortuous venous swellings over the medial aspect of the right ankle, medial and posterior aspect of the calf and the lower thigh, extending up to the mid-thigh region. On the right side, there is a dilated vein over the medial lower thigh near the knee on the left side with a single varicosity of around 2 by 2 centimeter. There is no bilateral lower limb edema. The swelling is completely reducible on lying down. The skin of over the swelling and lower leg does not show any color changes or ulceration. No blowout, dermal or reticular veins or ankle flare. The active joint movements of the patient are normal. No thin, tense, hairy skin, no nail changes or hair loss over the lower limb. No visible impulse on cuff near the inguinal region, no inguinal fullness, no abdominal swelling or dilated veins. The external genitalia are normal. On palpation, there is no localized warmth over the swelling. The swelling is non-tender. Peripheral arterial pulses are well palpable. On Brody Trendelenburg test, on the right side, on tying a tourniquet or placing a hand at the placing a thumb at the saphenofemoral junction. On the right side, the reflux was seen at the saphenofemoral junction with a gradual filling of veins from above the knee when the hand was kept at the XFJ. On the left side, there was just a reflux present at the saphenofemoral junction. On multiple tourniquet test, below knee and above knee perforators were found to be incompetent on the right side with gradual filling of veins. The tourniquets were tied just below the saphenofemoral junction in the mid-thigh region and below the knee. On palpation of the incompetent perforator after reduction of varicosities in supine position, below knee and above knee medially, where two incompetent perforators were palpated. Below knee was well appreciated. On palpation in the defect in the deep fascia, cuff impulse was present at the saphenofemoral junction on the right side in standing position, was not appreciated on the left side. On tapping the varicosities below the knee, the impulse was on the right side. The impulse was felt at the saphenofemoral junction, was negative on the left side. On applying tourniquet below the saphenofemoral junction, on standing, on walking in standing position, on walking, varicosities shrunk and no complaints of severe cramp-like pain in the limb was observed. There is no inguinal lymphadenopathy. There is no abdominal swelling palpated, no dilated veins or free fluid. Rest of the systemic examination was not significant. So I come to my diagnosis. The diagnosis is based on my history and clinical examination. It is a case of bilateral chronic venous insufficiency leading to varicose veins with saphenofemoral junction incompetence bilaterally and below knee and above knee perforator incompetence on the right side. C as symptomatic to EP AS plus P PR without any complications.
You have a photograph of the patient?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Dhaval. Dr. Dhaval?
Yes, sir.
Your presentation is completely jumbled up. It is not exactly showing what is the right limb finding, what is the left limb finding. It should be categorized as right and left, and then it should be tabulated. Not that you are saying sometime as left, sometime as right, and you're saying as right side and left side. I think you must define as right lower limb or the left lower limb. It's not very clear at all. It's completely jumbled up.
Mr. Dhaval, what you do is you please represent the right limb findings first in one go, and then go to the left limb. Please start the clinical finding of the right limb, that is involved limb first. Tell all the series of findings. Then you go to the normal. Please repeat again for the benefit of the students as well as.
Yes, sir. Sorry, sir. For the right limb, there was venous swelling resembling the dilated veins. So starting from the medial aspect of the right ankle, medial and posterior aspect of the calf and the lower thigh region, extending up to the mid thigh. There was no edema, no swelling. Swelling was completely reducible on lying down. There was no skin changes, ulceration over the lower limb, no blowout dermal or reticular veins. Joint movements were normal. No thin, tense, hairy skin, no nail changes.
Joint movements are inspection.
Active joint movements, yes, sir.
Which swelling was reducing here?
Sir, the varicose,
right from the beginning, the faculty said that don't call it as a swelling. You know it is a vascular lesion. We're talking about a vein. And again and again, you are going into the reducible and compressible, non-cough impulse, something like a hernia you are started presenting.
Okay, sir. There is no abdominal swelling on inspection or any dilated veins. External genitalia are normal.
You should say the venous engorgement completely disappears on lying down. It is not a swelling at all. It's a dilated vein which you can see, and the right side findings are much different from the left side findings. What you have shown on the photograph, the right side is much more involved than the left side.
Yes, sir. It's the right side which is involved, sir. It is the right side which is involved. The left side.
Bilateral chronic venous insufficiency is your diagnosis.
Sir, the patient did not complain of any left side symptoms, but on examination, I could find a varicosity.
There are some dilated veins which I can see on the left side also in this photograph.
Yes, it was just an examination finding. The patient didn't give any history of the left side.
See, even on inspection, it is very clearly visible that the right side is much more involved than the left side. And this you should bring out clearly when you are starting your clinical presentation. Okay. Right? There is no harm in mentioning that the findings on the left side are much less as compared to the right side, or the right side is much more involved. The right side is the dominant limb which is involved. It is not the left limb which is dominantly involved. No?
Yes, sir.
Or when you are telling the diagnosis bilateral chronic insufficiency, then you say right more than left.
Yes, sir. It is right more than left. Yes.
That is also important.
In the right side itself, there appears to be some prominence in the popliteal fossa. So you have to comment about looking at the picture. There are prominence in the popliteal fossa as well.
Yes,
we don't know what's happening to the small short saphenous system on the right lower limb.
Yes, sir. I was actually not able to differentiate whether it is a short saphenous system incompetence or a perforator incompetence there, because on tying a tourniquet, there was gradual filling of the veins rather than a rapid filling, which I thought would be a more of a perforator incompetence.
No, you should have made a separate examination for the short saphenous system on the right lower limb and comment. Go ahead.
Inspection and palpation.
Yes, sir. On the inspection of the right side is done. On palpation, on the right side, there is no localized warmth over the swelling, over the veins, dilated veins. It is non-tender. The veins are non-tender. Peripheral arterial pulses are present while palpated. On Brody Trendelenburg test, on the right side.
Which test will do first? Trendelenburg first or a peripheral arterial pulse first?
Sir, a peripheral arterial pulses.
Why you are come to a conclusion it is a venous deficiency you are going to treat. And examination is on the venous deficiency. And please start finishing that your venous deficiency, venous examination first. Then you also do the peripheral arterial pulse.
Okay, sir.
Neurovascular deficit can be kept at after giving the entire findings about the presenting problem, right?
Presenting.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. Sir, on the right side, there were after reduction of the varicosities and keeping a thumb at the saphenofemoral junction. When the patient was asked to stand, there was gradual filling of veins from above the knee below, and again on reduction of the varicosities, when the patient was asked to stand without any thumb at the saphenofemoral junction, there was a reflux seen at the saphenofemoral junction with rapid filling of the veins.
You are not tying anything, you are just putting a thumb.
Yes, sir. I'm putting a thumb, sir.
Okay. There is no need for tie.
Yes, sir. Now on applying multiple tourniquets, I applied 3 tourniquets, one below the saphenofemoral junction, one in the just above the knee, and one below the knee. I could observe a gradual filling of veins of below knee area and the above knee area, suggestive of a perforator incompetence. Now on supine position, on palpation of the deep fascia or at the site of perforator incompetence, I could clearly appreciate a defect in the deep fascia in the below knee perforator region, as well as in the above knee perforator region. The cuff impulse was felt on the saphenofemoral junction on the right side on standing position without reduction of varicosity. On tapping the varicosities from below the knee, the impulse was felt on the right side at the saphenofemoral junction. And to rule out deep venous thrombosis, I tied a tourniquet below the saphenofemoral junction. On walking, the varicosities shrink and no complaints of severe crampy pain in the lower leg.
Please, short stress. What is it denotes?
Yes, sir.
Your short stress, what is it denotes?
Can I make a comment?
You have heard that impulse. And what does it implies?
It just implies that the entire column of movement, there is a single column
you
of blood.
You see a single column, or you are seeing a multiple column branching out everywhere?
Yes, sir. Actually, this I feel on examination was some branching of the great saphenous vein, which were varicose more than the actual great saphenous vein.
And how do you expect your tap is transmitting only straight to?
Yes, sir. If I could tap on the below knee on the right limb at the area of a varicosity, and I could feel the palpation above. But in the area behind the popliteal region and above the knee, on the posterior side, these were the varicosities which I felt maybe of the branches of the GSC.
Are you justified in doing modified Perthes test when you have a perforator's incompetence also?
I'm not aware of this.
These, can I give a point?
Yes.
These tests, these tests are of historical importance. Nobody does this. Does anybody of us do all these tests except for the Tetelenburg test and for the multiple tourniquet test? The Figan test, the Schwartz test, it is totally historical. There might be a few examiners who are the old examiners of the old order. They might be wanting those tests. You can just enumerate them that all these tests have been done and negative. Instead of explaining every test and what is the pathophysiology behind it, I do not see any reason to be added in a clinical examination. What you are saying?
I fully agree with you. I was also going to say the same thing. What is the importance of all these tests in the present era? How many tests are you going to use? They are all useless.
It is totally useless. But when the candidate is saying the test, and if he say it in an indirect way, he will be creating problem for him.
He can always enumerate the test and say these are negative. And if he's asked to explain, if somebody wants to know, then he can go ahead and explain it. That's what I feel. That is my opinion.
Yes, sir.
See, I also feel in the same way. But Dr. Prabal, the only thing is that some of the examiners may still insist for the candidate to know this test. So it is better that the candidate knows it. I personally will not ask any candidate to elaborate on these tests.
Exactly.
They are useless. My next question before you asked was, what is the usefulness of doing all these tests in the present day era, wherein you are not going to operate a patient of varicose veins without an ultrasound Doppler?
Absolutely.
So the only point here in physical examination is that first you have to rule out the arterial disease. That's one issue which you have to rule out, that there is no coexisting arterial disease. And secondly, the patient does not have any evidence of a DVT, or there are ulcers or all those sorts of things present. These are the only things which are important in examination, and the extent of disease, so that you can keep it as a reference for your treatment or your follow-up later on. These are the only things which are important from the examination right now in a patient with varicose veins, according to me.
It is mandatory. You must do for a deep vein thrombosis. You have to do a test. But when you have a perforator's incompetence, can you do a modified Perthes test?
Yeah.
No, sir, we cannot do so.
Even I will not depend on a clinical examination for ruling out a deep vein thrombosis in a patient with varicose veins. You have to do an ultrasound Doppler before this patient is put on any form of treatment.
No, DVT in a DVT, what the clinical signs, what is eliciting, it is not nowadays. No one will do. In fact, it will go for dislodgement. So instead of that, what Sir Virendra sir is saying is better. We should go for a Doppler. And one more thing is how the DVT is felt. It is compared to bark of a tree. It's a feel. It is not the test what you are supposed to do. And one question I have for you, Dr. Dhaval. If this is the Trendelenburg test, what you are saying. Similarly, there are some Trendelenburg operation, Trendelenburg position, Trendelenburg gate. Can you just enumerate them? What exactly the meaning of those?
Yes, ma'am. The Trendelenburg test is the same I described.
Yeah, this
Trendelenburg position is a 15-degree head-low position. The Trendelenburg surgery is a surgery for varicose veins with flush ligation of the saphenofemoral junction. And Trendelenburg gait, I'm not very sure, but it is basically gluteus medius
it is the
paralysis, but I don't recollect it completely.
Muscles as well as the gluteal muscles. That is.
Yes.
Okay, I think go ahead with the investigations.
Professor Abhay sir, you wanted to tell something? Please, sir, please.
Since he has talked about Trendelenburg, I want to know Trendelenburg's first name.
I don't know that.
Abhay.
I will give you Brody. Hi. Brody, Benjamin Brody and dash F Trendelenburg. Come. I had asked you to do your homework when you had presented this case long back.
Yes, sir.
And not yet done. Anyway, I will not
William Trendelenburg. I'm not sure. I don't
have an elephant's memory, Dr. Dalvi.
I am one of the old examiners.
You would still like to ask these tests to your candidate?
Virender, since I am a guest faculty, I'll give my this later.
Okay. Okay.
Sir, please give the answer, sir. Trendelenburg.
I believe it is Frederick Trendelenburg.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
From my knowledge, it is Benjamin Brody and Frederick Trendelenburg.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Dhaval, one more. You said inguinal lymphadenopathy. What is the reason for going for examining for the inguinal lymphadenopathy?
Just to rule out any compression of the deep veins because of inguinal lymph node secondary to any malignancy.
No? Is it anything else? Actually, how they are arranged? It is an anatomy what I am actually asking. How these inguinal lymph nodes are arranged?
They consist of the superficial groups and the deep group. The superficial groups are arranged in a T-shaped fashion. And the deep groups.
Which one you want to examine in case of
divide to supra and infrainguinal and then go away.
Yes.
Dhaval, now tell me, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Tell me about in the CEAP classification, can you elaborate on the C and what are the various Cs and which class does your case fall under? And what is the latest modification in the CEAP classification? Do you know that? When was it done?
I don't know the date, sir. When was it?
The CEAP modification has come in 2020. You know that, no? Recently. Tell me what the C stands for. What are the various types of C?
Yes, sir. The C.
Also, this is for the other examiners and the faculty. They have added a new in the 4AB. They have added a 4C, and which you know is incidentally it is called corona phlebectica.
Phlebectica. Yes.
So it is a phlebitis we see in corona patients. They have added this in 2020. This has come out just recently. I was reading somewhere about a month back. Could you elaborate the C, please?
Yes, sir. It's the clinical picture of the patient. C0 is no evidence of any venous, no evidence of any varicosities or lower limb edema. C1 is the reticular veins or the telangiectasias. C2 are the varicose veins. C3 is the lower limb edema. C4 is, C3 is the lower limb edema. C4 are the skin changes. C4A includes eczema. C4B includes lipodermatosclerosis. And C4C, as you sir said, now is corona phlebectica. C5.
Yeah, C5.
Yes, sir. C5 is the healed ulceration over the lower limb. And C6 is an active ulceration, active venous ulcer over the lower limb.
Right.
And we
So
categorize C. Sorry, sir.
What is your stage in C?
Yes, sir. It is CS2. C is, the patient is symptomatic for the varicosities, so it is CS2.
Right. How would you differentiate in the C4? You said pigmentation, eczema, and lipodermatosclerosis. How do you differentiate between the two? Pigmentation, eczema, and lipodermatosclerosis. What are these? What are they? What is an eczema? What is a lipodermatosclerosis? How do you differentiate?
So pigmentation is the skin color changes secondary to venous stenosis. And in lipodermatosclerosis, there is skin thickening.
No, first stick to eczema, please. What is eczema?
Eczema is a itching like...
4A is pigmentation or eczema. And 4B is lipodermatosclerosis. So what is 4A, pigmentation and eczema? What is eczema? How does it look like? Clinically, how does it look like? And how do you differentiate that from lipodermatosclerosis, which is 4B?
Yes, sir. The eczema is like itchy, inflamed lesion which we see.
No, it's not inflamed. It's a red, pigmented...
red colored, infected, itchy lesion, sir.
An inverted champagne bottle is lipodermatosclerosis with all the changes.
Yes.
And what is lipodermatosclerosis? So when did you say that it is not eczema and it is lipodermatosclerosis?
Sir, when there is fibrosis and skin thickening changes.
Can you see fibrosis?
No, there is skin thickening changes, sir, in the lower.
So what is the clinical term for that? What do you say? You don't say fibrosis of the skin, do you?
No, sir. It is skin thickening.
Then what do you say? Fibrosis is a pathological definition. So you don't say that. It is thickening and induration of the skin.
Yes.
When you have that, then that is lipodermatosclerosis, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, Dhaval, do you know the anatomy of the saphenous opening? Where did you examine it? And
yes, sir. I examined the saphenous opening after identifying the pubic tubercle around 4 centimeter lateral and downwards from the pubic tubercle. It was an approximate location of the saphenous opening I could examine.
So what is the falciform ligament there? Falciform margin there?
Sorry,
what is the falciform margin? What is the falciform margin of a saphenous opening? And what is the saphenous opening covered with?
I'm not aware of this.
It is called a cribriform fascia.
Yes, cribriform fascia, yes.
And the lateral sharp margin is called the falciform. Ligament. That's another falciform ligament. And how many veins are there?
Yes, sir. The saphenous vein near its saphenofemoral junction receives 6 tributaries. From the laterally, it receives the superficial circumflex area, superficial inferior epigastric veins. Medially, the superficial and deep external pudendal veins, and sometimes the accessory anterior saphenous vein or the posteromedial thigh veins.
So, what is the vein of Giacometti?
It is a communication between the short saphenous vein, and the great saphenous vein. So the short saphenous vein, instead of opening into the communication with the great saphenous system.
And what is the vein of Leonardo then?
Sorry, sir. I don't.
What's the vein of Leonardo then?
No, sir. I don't know about vein of Leonardo.
Okay, let's continue. I think Dr. Vindas will continue. We'll talk about it. Let's continue. The posterior arc vein is called the vein of Leonardo.
Will you explain that lipodermatosclerosis? What is the mechanism?
Yes, sir. Yes. Sir, it is because of the induration and thickening, because it is the venous stasis which causes the leakage of leukocytes and the red blood cells, along with lysis of RBCs causing hemosiderin deposition, causing pigmentation, and later on fibrosis leading to lipodermatosclerosis.
Pigmentation is leading on to fibrosis.
No, sir. It is the hemosiderin which is considered, which is actually the impetus for the fibroblasts to proliferate.
Pigmentation, you color the red color there. How do you get that induration and that chronic edema, thickening?
So it is a chronic inflammatory changes because of leukocyte trapping inside the
so what is happening there?
Soft tissue. So soft tissue. Soft tissue chronic inflammation. Sir.
It's not inflammation.
So can I request one thing, please? Those who are not talking, can they mute their this thing, because otherwise there's a lot of disturbance coming in the
I will do it, sir. I will look into it, sir. I will look into it.
As soon as somebody asks a question, then you can unmute. I think that would be better.
How do you proceed further?
Yes, sir. I would like to investigate this patient. I would explain the patient about the nature of the disease, that the patient is suffering from varicose veins. On routine investigations, I would like to have a simple complete hemogram and RFTs and LFTs. I would like to investigate further with the help of a duplex scan with a color Doppler. I will get all the information about the deep venous system as well as the superficial venous system and perforator incompetency, if any.
So what are the things specifically you look for in the ultrasound Doppler report? What
Yes,
are the things you are interested in knowing specifically, clearly?
Yes, sir. I would like to do the Doppler in duplex scan in the supine as well as standing position. I would like to look for if there is any deep venous thrombosis or deep venous occlusion. I will look for any reflux at the saphenofemoral junction. Sorry, sir. I will like to look for. I will look for the saphenofemoral junction and the saphenopopliteal junction incompetence or reflux present. I will like to look for whether there are segmental refluxes in the superficial system. Sorry, sir, I'm not able to hear you, sir.
You said that you will look for deep venous thrombosis or occlusion. So what is the difference between occlusion and thrombosis?
Sir, occlusion means any extrinsic compression on the deep venous system and the iliac veins or the femoral veins causing deep venous obstruction. Deep venous thrombosis will be intrinsic thrombus inside the deep venous system.
That means that you're asking for an ultrasound abdomen also.
Yes, sir. It is complemented. I will like to do a ultrasound.
You did not mention that.
Yes, sir. Sorry, sir.
DVT is a cause or effect of varicose vein?
DVT is a cause of the varicose vein.
Oh?
Because of the incompetence of the deep system, obstruction of the deep system, the pressure will be transmitted to the superficial secondary varicose veins.
The deep system is completely blocked, then how the system will be transmitted? Even it will be transmitted at that opening also it will be blocked.
How much blood flows from the superficial system and how much, sorry?
There will be obstruction at the iliofemoral area.
Asked, how much system of blood flows through the superficial, how much through the deep system?
I will ask a supplementary question. Is there any grades of reflux? You have to do real-time B mode duplet Doppler. That will, and also you have to resort to some maneuvers, no? Valsalva maneuvers and all that. They'll give you the information whether it is grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. All these are very valuable input. No? Now they have said so much importance is to the real-time B mode ultrasonogram. You have to give all these details. No? Right, go ahead.
Yes, sir. I am not aware about the superficial and deep venous system.
Only 10% moves to the superficial system and 90% of the blood goes from the deep system.
That is exactly
So there is
opposite for
DVT.
lymphatic drainage.
Right.
The superficial system will be 90 and deep system will be 10.
Okay, right. What you do basically, what does an ultrasonologist do? He puts the probe on the saphenofemoral junction and then he compresses the calf to see for a reflux, right? So what is the normal reflux time? Like what in your, or this person who does not have varicose vein, what is the time and when do you call it as a reflux?
Sir, it would be less than 0.5 second of reflux.
Right,
Vein
very
diameter
good. 500
is
milliseconds.
less than 3.5. Yes.
Yeah, a
Or
normal person
3.5
would have
mm.
less than. Yeah, okay, fine. That is fine. 0.5 second, more than 0.5 second would be classified as reflux. What else do you see in the ultrasound? Dr. Bansal, let us ask, what are other things that you see in ultrasound? You have looked for the reflux. You have looked for a deep vein thrombosis. Then what else? Have you looked for a saphenofemoral valve function?
Yes, sir. Saphenofemoral or saphenopopulatal
see
incompetence.
The size of the vein at the
size of the vein.
At the size of the vein at the where it is dipping inside into the femoral, right?
Yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt. I'll have to leave. I have a seminar of my department. So thank you so much. I think rest of you can continue.
Thank you, sir.
So much.
Professor Virender, sir, thank you for joining with us in a short notice.
No.
We look forward to have a comfortable time sometime in the coming weeks for you as a full-time faculty, sir.
Okay,
Thank you, Professor Virender, sir. With the
right. I think we should proceed further because we get.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Can you just trace the veins, deep veins from what? Can you just trace the deep veins? You said the deep vein thrombosis. What are the deep veins you know?
Be the iliac side, the femoral, and
from
below
upwards, deep veins.
Below upwards, it will arise from the plantar venous arch and form the concomitants, that is the posterior tibial veins. Sorry, sir.
Deep veins arises from the plantar venous arch.
No, sir. Plantar venous arch as well as the dorsalis pedis vein. This pedis vein.
Superficial vein.
And the
what are the deep veins you know in the leg?
Yeah, only 3 deep veins in the leg.
Yes, sir. Posterior
all
tibial
of these
vein.
superficial veins open into the deep vein.
Yes, sir. Those posterior tibial veins, the anterior tibial veins, and the peroneal veins.
They join to become?
They join to become the popliteal veins, sir. The at the adductor hiatus and forms the femoral veins.
Veins becomes what?
Sir.
What is the continuation of popliteal vein?
Yes, it forms the superficial and it is joined by the deep femoral vein, which forms the common femoral vein.
Superficial femoral vein is also a deep vein.
Yes, sir. Actually, the terminology is eradicated now. It is considered as a femoral vein only. It's a deep vein joined by the profunda femoris vein, forming the femoral vein, continuing as the iliac, external iliac.
Right. The faculty, please. One thing I want to say that we are losing time. We are nearly nearing an hour. I think we should move on to the management bit also now, since we've covered the investigation. Any other investigation? Anybody else wants to comment? Any other investigation you would like to do?
For these patients, I feel a duplex, triplex canvas will show all the information.
So what are you going to What are you going to do for this patient? You have, this is a saphenofemoral incompetence, right? I'll give you the finding. Saphenofemoral incompetence, reflux is there at the saphenofemoral junction, right? And the veins are dilated. There is no deep vein thrombosis. Now, what will you do?
Sir, I would give the option of a surgery as well as an endovenous intervention for the patient. I would prefer an endovenous intervention for the patient. The patient is having a reflux at the saphenofemoral junction. I would like to tell the patient about the various endovenous procedures available, commonly being the laser ablation and radiofrequency ablation available at our institute. And I would like to go ahead with a radio.
Yes, sir. I would like
carry
on.
I would like to go with an endovenous laser ablation for my patients, sir.
Can you do RFA for all patients? In what patients can you not do an RFA?
Sir, in this, there are very dilated and tortuous veins in this patient. So the catheter would be difficult to be guided in this patient.
Yes.
Radio frequency.
Yes. That is one. What else?
And
what are other requisites in which you will not do an RFA or any endovenous ablation? That means that you have to operate on that patient. What are the indications for that?
Sir, if there is a large saphenous varix, I would like to go ahead with a surgery. Or if there are branch varicosities as in this patient, which may not be dealt with an endovenous procedure, sir.
Usually what we have to look out is that there's no thrombus, number one. The vein is a relatively straight vein. The size of the great saphenous vein at the opening should not be too big. It should not be more than, I think, 1.2 or 1.3. That is the normal cutoff limit. It should not be a post-phlebitic vein. So these are the things. Now let us discuss first what are the open surgical operations and what would you do and how would you do it? And then we'll go to the endovenous techniques.
Yes, sir. For a SFGL incompetence, I would like to go ahead with a modified Trendelenburg surgery. That's an intense procedure which includes flush ligation and division at the saphenofemoral junction. And as this patient also has a perforator incompetence, I would also like to do a subfacial individual perforator ligation.
Is that enough just to ligate the vessel, or would you like to do anything else?
Sorry, sir. Along with the stripping of the varicose veins, just below the DC.
Up to what?
What are the rates of recurrence for these two? If you only just flush ligate the saphenofemoral junction, and in another case you do a ligation plus the flushing of the vein. If you only do a ligation, what is the chance of recurrence?
What is the chance of recurrence? I'm not exactly aware of the percentage, sir, but the recurrence will be very high in case of if we don't strip because of the neovascularization.
It is about nearly 40% recurrence rate. So you have to strip it as well. Till where will you strip it?
Sir, just below the knee.
Below the knee.
Right.
It is not below the knee. It is above the knee. It is above the knee. Up to the knee, you have to strip. Not below the knee, because it accompanied by saphenous nerve. Should not strip below the knee. First, you should tell the examination of abdomen also. You have to complete
the recommendation, right? I disagree. Yes, it is exactly. You're right. It is at the knee. Basically, you have to minimum of a length of 7 centimeters. You have to be within 7 centimeters before from the knee joint, right? So it is what they say. It is better. What you say in an exam is from the knee. That would be a good option rather than saying above the knee or below the knee. From the knee, exactly where the knee is.
Sir? Knee joint line.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am.
Is it at the knee joint line? No, I'm asking sir actually. Okay. They are asking above knee or below knee.
The knee joint, ma'am. The knee joint line, you can go 7 centimeters below that maximum. They say that after that, you have a high incidence of a saphenous vein nerve injury. So as sir said, a saphenous nerve injury can be there. So maximum of say 7 centimeters. 7 centimeters is the size of your finger. That is how I calculate it. So it should be above that.
Okay, Dhaval.
Right. So you have done a stripping, you have done a high ligation, a flush ligation. And what else would you do?
I would also ligate the tributaries of the great saphenous vein at the saphenofemoral junction.
You ligate first tributaries?
First the tributaries. We first ligate the tributaries by minimal dissection. And then we ligate and resect.
What will happen?
There will be a recurrence and there will be varicosities in the lower medial thigh region. Upper medial thigh region in the perineal region.
Where do you want to strip?
Sir, just if we ligate and or dissect, there will be high chance.
Already we have discussed. Now, what is your objective of stripping?
Sir, just to reduce recurrence, because neovascularization can cause recanalization of these veins.
No, that's a different reason. Recanalization, there are so many other reasons. What will happen if you are stripping with the deep veins, with the perforators?
Sir, I didn't get it, sir.
When you are stripping the superficial vein, and what is happening to the perforators vein?
the perforators, the perforator incompetence can also be dealt with.
No, you are removing the perforators, but below the knee, when it comes, the perforators are not connecting with the saphenous vein to the deep vein. It is only communicating with the posterior arch vein.
Posterior arch vein, yes.
So there is no point in removing the saphenous vein below the knee, not only because of saphenous nerve reason, also that it is not that the intent of the perforators, the communications will be also not moved.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the sinuses there in the lower.
Have a name called crossectomy.
Sorry, sir.
Crossectomy, a surgery for varicose veins. Have you heard of this name?
No, sir. Crossectomy, I didn't hear.
CROSSECTOMY.
No, sir.
This is another name for high saphenofemoral or saphenopopliteal ligation, because you ligate all the tributaries like a cross. So this is called a crossectomy.
Okay, sir.
Just check it the neck.
The shepherd's fast, the rod has a crook, and this is what it goes into. This is how the superficial, the great saphenous opens into the femoral vein. So it looks like a shepherd's cross. It looks like a shepherd's.
This is called crossectomy. This surgery is called crossectomy.
So that's why they call it crossectomy.
Okay, sir.
Because of the shepherd's
post-operative management.
What is Linton's method? It's an open kind of surgery. Have you heard of it?
Post-operative management.
It is the modified Trendelenburg surgery along with flush ligation as well as stripping of the saphenous vein up to the knee, as well as subfacial ligation of the perforators.
No. Linton's method. You know what is Linton's line?
Not aware of that, sir.
Oh, well, Linton's line is the line about 2 centimeters along the great saphenous vein in the leg. So they used to open the hole, give a long incision right down from the knee to the ankle joint, and then ligate the perforators each individual.
It is Todd and Clackett operation.
It looks very bad. Right.
So we used to call it as a Todd and Clackett operation, but we don't know how to know it now.
Yes, it's not done.
Just to identify the site of, with the help of Doppler, we can identify the site of perforators. We can ligate it.
Right.
Not like a routine Todd and Clackett operation now. Yes, what is the post-operative management?
Yes, sir. I would, as soon as after the surgery, I will give a compression elastic bandage for the patient, graded stockings for the patient, and ask the patient to ambulate and do routine household work as soon as possible, barring from heavy exercises. And after a week, the patient can continue the routine work. We'd also like to give analgesics for the patient and keep the patient on a follow-up of every 3 monthly with a Doppler.
Yeah, what are the chances of recurrence?
What do you?
Yes.
What are the chances of recurrence after all this?
Sir, after a surgery, the recurrence rates, I'm not exactly sure of the recurrence percentage, but it would be, I would explain the patient that the recurrence may also free from another vein or any branch of the same vein causing a recurrence.
What do you actually do? Like where you have done the surgery, you have done the high tie, the stripping, and multiple avulsions of vein. What do you do in the OT? How do you dress it? Or do you put an elastic stocking straight away in the OT itself? Do you do that?
No, sir. In the OT, a cotton roll is applied from below above. As we start stripping, along with the stripping, we start applying the compression.
Why don't you say that then? Why are you saying elastic compression manage straight away? What do you do? What everybody does? We all do is put a cotton roll and they put crepe bandages, right?
Yes.
Graduated crepe band. That is the usual procedure you do. And the next morning, what in the evening? What will you ring your consultant? Your consultant wants to know the condition of the patient. So what are you all going to tell him? What are the things that you're going to tell him?
Yes,
in the post-op ward round.
Yes, sir. If the patient is suffering from any pain and the ambulation of the patient, sir.
Sorry?
If patient is suffering from any pain or any ambulation and about the ambulation of the patient. Sir.
Why do you want to ask about pain? What is its significance?
Sir, as such, surgery itself would be painful, and there may be chance of stripping any of the deep venous tributary.
No. A very horrible complication, which I have seen once in my experience till now. A patient has landed up into an acute compartment syndrome because of a tight bandage. So patient complaining in the evening, severe pain in the leg. The resident does not pay heed to it. He says it is a normal post-operative pain, right? So what are you going to check in this patient to avoid such a horrible, life-threatening complication? That is very important, because I have seen one patient having suffered.
Yes,
what will you see?
Yes, sir. Pain of the peripheral tingling or any paresthesias, and pain on plantar flexion.
How many P's? Why did you say it?
Yes, sir. Pain, paresthesias, paralysis.
Pain, pallor.
Paresthesia.
Yes. P for?
Poikilothermia and paresthesia. Sir.
All these are fine. It is most important that you check the movement. If there's pain on passive movement, it is compartment syndrome.
Absolutely. Right. Let us quickly now, we're running out of time. So let us tell about, can you tell me about the endovascular procedures that you do, and what is the basis for these endovascular ablation procedures? What is it actually doing?
Yes, sir.
What are you doing in that?
They ablate just the axial system, that is the superficial venous system.
What is
yes,
by what method? What
it
principle?
is basically thrombosis and intimal damage, either by the provision of heat or by the formation by any chemical, that is a sclerotherapy, irritant chemical. For in an endovenous laser ablation, we use laser which heats up the blood, causes intimal damage and thrombosis.
Different from sclerotherapy. Endovenous procedure is different from sclerotherapy. No? This ablation and laser therapy is basically heat damage the endothelium of the vein.
Yes, sir.
But sclerotherapy is different. Okay.
I'll just clarify over here. There are two procedures basically broadly divided into. Number one is endovascular ablation, right?
Yes,
now,
sir.
endovascular ablation includes two things. One is by ablation by radio frequency ablation, which is called venous, and the other one is by laser. Whereas the third, now this is the one category. The other category is non-thermal, non-tumescent ablation. That in that one, you use sclerotherapy agents to block the vein at the saphenofemoral junction, which is a very latest method which has come up. Meditronics has come up with an instrument in which you can do a non-thermal, non-tumescent sclerotherapy at the saphenofemoral junction. That is the second thing. So now first we come to the endovascular ablations by one radio frequency ablation and the other by laser, right?
Yes, sir.
So how do you do it?
Yes, sir. In endovenous laser ablation, under ultrasound guidance, the catheter is placed along with the laser cable inside.
How many French?
Sorry, sir.
Catheter.
7 French, sir.
7 French catheter. Okay.
Yes, sir. It is placed under ultrasound guidance, just around 2 to 3 centimeter distal to the.
No. 2 to 3 centimeters. You will miss some veins which are opening into the proximal to the saphenofemoral junction. So you have a recurrence. So what is the length? Till where will you go in the saphenous vein to start your ablation?
1 centimeter.
Yes.
Distal to the of the saphenofemoral
2 to 3
junction.
centimeters.
Yes, sir.
It is 1 centimeter. Exactly 1 centimeter.
Why 1 centimeter?
Sir,
why 1
because
centimeter?
The laser heat generated can also affect the deep venous system, leading to thrombosis there, which can cause deep venous thrombosis in the femoral veins. If the catheter is too
can extend into the deep system.
Yes, sir.
Right. So you have put a 7 French catheter by ultrasound guidance right through the saphenous vein near up to 1 centimeter of the saphenofemoral junction. Now what
Yes,
do you do?
Yes, sir. The laser energy is activated. The laser fiber is activated.
No. Before that.
We confirm the position with that of Doppler.
You
sir.
have confirmed it. We have confirmed it. After that. Dr. Hitesh is giving hints. What do you do? See, you will spread the heat all around. I'm giving you a hint.
Oh, sorry, sir. Tumescent anesthesia.
Why are you not saying it?
Yes, sir.
Tumescent anesthesia. So what do you do? What do you do?
It's a dilute lignocaine, around 500 ml of solution containing 50 ml of 1% lignocaine with adrenaline and sodium bicarbonate, which is injected under ultrasound guidance in the saphenous sheath, which acts as a heat sink around 1 centimeter around the saphenous vein, so that it prevents injury to the peripheral structures like nerves and other things, and also causes compression on the vein lumen, so that
skin burn. Yes, most important, skin burn.
Okay, Dhawal, sorry, yes, Dhawal. Let's finish. Just rattle off which are the other methods. What is SEPS and what is open sclerosant?
Yes, sir.
One
SEPS
question regarding
endoscopic superficial perforator surgery.
Right. That's it. And how do you perform this simple sclerosing of the varicosity?
Yes, sir. It is just injection of sclerosant in the form of polydocanol or sodium tetradecyl sulfate in the small telangiectase or reticular veins.
How is it prepared? How is the
for a foam sclerotherapy, we use 2 syringes. That's a Tesserae method. We use air of 5 ml and 2
How
ml
much
of
you inject?
Around 0.12 ml in each under.
Where do you inject?
Starting proximally on the varicosities.
What do you have to do before you inject? How do you inject?
We aspirate, confirm the position under.
No, you put in the needles first.
Yes, sir. We put the needles.
Right, you put in the needles first, and then start injecting. You empty the vein and then you inject.
Yes, empty the vein and inject, because blood will not allow the sclerosant to enter.
Right. So you empty it, you put the needle, then you start injecting. Okay.
Yes.
Right. Anything else now? Can we move to the next case? Only running.
I think we should finish. Dhawal, you have done an excellent job, and my full thing. A good round of applause from our homes for you. Very well done. Good.
Thank you.
Dr. Abhay.
Sir, I think
Dr. Abhay Dalvi.
Abhay Dalvi, please, sir.
Dhawal is from my institute. The very good boy, has worked very hard. I just want to tell all the listeners out here, again and again, varicose veins is a very tricky case. It's not an easy case to do for following reasons. Number one, you've got to know the anatomy of the venous system perfectly to answer these questions. That's number one. Number two is there are so many tests which are described, and there is going to be a problem with the examiners. Some examiners don't want it. Some examiners want it. You've got to be ready to answer any question that is asked as far as the tests are concerned. In your slides, Dhawal, each and every test you have written somebody's name that has been described, like Morrissey, etc., etc. Be very careful. When not needed, do not take names. Otherwise, you are going to be having one examiner asking you in details about these patients. Number 4 is, you just now saw, all of you all, that there were differences of opinions in the examiners that were examining you. So you got to identify and be on the correct side of the examiners to answer relevant questions to the point. Do not exaggerate things. Otherwise, again, the examiners are going to come after you. Number 5, you were like a person who was in a hurry. You have packed your bag with various things where you don't know what is lying where. So when the question is being asked, you are searching for answers. That is not what is expected out of a student. He has to be absolutely clear in his ideas when the case is presented or answers are given. And the last thing I want to say is, Virender left. He was not on the screen at all. I think the future of examinations is in e-examinations, where you don't see the examiner at all. Is it the future, Prabal? I don't know. But that is going to happen.
No, sir.
The next
visible
examiner which you are going to see, Dhawal and all the other students, is examiners eating while asking questions, which is also very nice. Prabal, this is for you. And last but not the least case, I have to go on record. Dr. Prabal is a very good friend of mine. and his contribution to COVID of more than ₹1 lakh from his own pocket. Thank you, Prabal. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, faculty, sir.
We can go to the next case.
We will go to the next case.